Girls, Sueleni, I'm waiting for you. We are waiting for you. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding, Sueleni, sorry. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. It's our last session. We have a full day, very, very interesting parallel sessions. I have the opportunity to see two of the parallel sessions were very, very interesting papers and discussion. And now we are reaching the last session for the first day of the first day. And I have a pleasure to coordinate this session. The session is the policy roundtable. Last year we have a policy roundtable in the conference in Uruguay. It was very, very interesting. Who knows, we can create a tradition to build in every conference, our conference, a policy roundtable like this to discuss not only research projects, research results, academic research results, but also this bridge for us is very important with policy. I have the opportunity today to receive a multinational table, round table. We have here. I have the pleasure to present Professor Veronica Robert from the University of San Martin, Argentina. Veronica is PhD in economics, researcher of CONICET, and professor of the University Nacional San Martin and Nacional General Sarmiento también, ¿no? Researcher in economics of innovation, technological change. Carlos Bianchi, on my right, PhD in economics, also professor at the Universidad de la República del Uruguay, researcher of the Uruguayan research system on topics on innovation and development in Latin America and innovation policy. And on my left, I have the opportunity to introduce I can say my colleague, because Professor Pacheco is professor of this house, professor of the Institute of Economics of Unicamp. Curriculum of Pacheco is very large. I will say just a few words. Pacheco was nowadays is executive director of the board of the FAPESP. Is the executive president of FAPESP, the funding agency in the state of São Paulo. Pacheco was deputy minister of science and technology in Brazil in the 90s, president of the board of directors of FINEP in the 90s also, president of the ITA, the Institute of Technology of Aeronautics, I think it's this, and general director of the Council of National Research on Center of Materials, CNPEM. It's a pleasure to receive you all, and we will have a very interesting, exciting discussion. We didn't arrange the order. I forgot. I'm sorry. So I ask it now for the three presenters who will be the first, the second, and the third. Veronica, you can use this parameter from right to the left. My right, my left, of course. Veronica, please.
I guess the presentation will be projected.
Yeah.
Any moment? Okay. Now, should I go there, perhaps?
It's up to you.
If it's going to be in that computer, I would like to go there. So this is easier for me. Close this. Try to check. Sorry about this. And also sorry because I I didn't realize that English was the official language of the conference, so my presentation is in Spanish, but I'm going to speak in English, and I can speak some to Spanish, but not some to Portuguese. That's for sure. So if anything is missing in translation, just let me know. I'm going to talk about industrial policies for the Global South. I think this presentation uh, is in a way part of my. It's not working. Okay. Okay. No problem. This presentation is part, or at least is kind of uh, related with my experience in government during 2023, 2022, and 2023 in the Secretariat of Strategic Affairs, where I work on how to and design different strategies for productive development related to energy transition. So that's the background of this presentation. So I am going to try to convince you. Perhaps you are already convinced, but I'm going to talk about why we from the Global South have to do industrial policies, but also which kind of obstacles, which kind of barriers we are going to face when we try to do that. Because say that industrial policy should be implemented is easy, but implemented by themselves is quite a different thing. So let me start by something that all of you are already aware, that is there is a new wave of industrial policies all around the globe. This new wave of industrial policy is led by the Global North, and this new wave arrives after a long time in which Global North had tell us to Global South that we should not implement anything that is called like industrial policy. Industrial policy was kind of a bad word for policy making, and in fact, to some extent, science and technology policy replaced the industrial policy from its throne, and there were some kind of science and technology policy, but industrial policy was quite undiscredited. However, all of you know that developed countries have applied industrial policy for a long term, and it was to some extent a part of the successful of their development path. I'm going to say that the situation for Global South appears like a new opportunity, since so many years that tell us that we should not implement any industrial policy. Now we are facing a new wave of industrial policy at global level. Perhaps this is our opportunity. This is the moment to implement this policy for the development of the Global South. But I should wonder if what this time would be different, and why this time there were not a new kick of the leather way again. No, I mean, this is the problem that we should take into account. Industrial policy, I mean, the driver for industrial policy in the Global North is really close related to ecological transition, but especially on decarbonization and especially on energy transition. And this is important because in these transitions, what we are facing is the new technological paradigm. And in this new technological paradigm, there are a lot of new global value chains, a lot of new value chains that need to build, that should need build from scratch. There are no such thing like a green hydrogen market right now. There is not such thing of green hydrogen global value chain right now, but there are a lot of prognostics that says that it's going to appear in the next 10, 15, 20 years. In fact, when you read prognosis like forecastings like International Energy Agency or International Renewables and Energy Agency, you will see that these kind of sectors will build from scratch in very short time. But it's not the only one. The same things happen with batteries. The same things happen with electricity as a huge sector that is going to be much more important than we are seeing right now. And that means that there are a lot of sectors that will be affected for these transitions, from appliances, home appliances, to capital goods, to several industries that are going to be transformed to be less contaminant, less carbon emitted, and less and trying to get close to this goal of zero emissions for 2050. But I think that is very important as well is this new change are building in a new geopolitical framework in which China and United States are confronting very heavily right now with trade wars, with technological espionage, with a lot of barriers to circulation of knowledge. And this is because the position that different countries would apply in the future in this value chain could mean a very different thing about the development of these countries, could mean very different thing about the opportunities for growth and the opportunities for employment. I mean, right now, every industrial policy, the policy rationale of every industrial policy all around the globe is about jobs, is about how to get jobs back to each country. So we will face this new building of chains, of productive chains, but we are going to see this building in a world that is in a dispute, in a hegemonic dispute in technological and productive field. For the Global South, energy transition and industrial policy should have a very different drivers. For instance, you know, energy transition pressures very much on natural resources, and as long as the Global South, and particularly Latin America, is very rich in natural resources, what is good expected is that from this energy transition, the Global South gets more primarized. I mean, our export profile is going to be more. There will be more participation of natural resources sectors in our trade profile, and it also could mean a profound or a deepness desindustrialization. Why that will be? Because with energy transition, and if this is a new technological paradigm, all of our technological system could be get locked in a wrong paradigm, could be locked in the previous paradigm. So it's very need for the Global South to transform their own technological and productive structures, because otherwise we are going to be primarized and also desindustrialized. I mean, we are going to lose our automotive industry. We are going to lose our steel industry. We're going to lose a lot of industry that would not be competitive in the new paradigm. So that's why Global South should implement industrial policies, and I am going to argue that we should implement these taxonomies, these policies, looking at our natural resources. what are the instruments that the Global South could apply for industrial policies? You know, industrial policies are carrot and sticks, and the Global North are much more focused on carrots, are much more focused on subsidies. But for the Global South, this is not an option, at least it's not a very it's not the first option. It's not very easy option because a lot of our countries lack of this fiscal fiscal space to implement this kind of subsidies. So Global South should require more imagination for implement this kind of policy. In the first place, they should use their new position in this new geopolitical balance, trying to get advantage of this position, and especially in regarding of the access of the natural resources. How we are going to, and I'm sorry, and there's another thing that is very important, that is in the building of this new global value change, the Global North is going to look at resources in the Global South, and we are seeing right now a lot of FID flux of investments that are arriving to all the Global South. So which kind of instrument that we have to can we actually participate in this new change with instruments of industrial policy. And here I want to be as clear as I can. I mean, industrial policy has been for a long time a terrain very complex and very difficult, where it's mixed up with state capacities and learning and experimentation and different agencies. And I know it's very hard to design a good industrial policy instrument, but I just for sake of simplicity, I would like to focus in three instruments. The first one is when FID, when you have investments that are arriving at our country, we should ask for national content to these investments. We should ask, this is, upstream in the change. Downstream in the change, you should ask for value added. Exports should be export with more value added than simply natural resources. And of course, you should ask for technological transfer, trying to push this investment to spend money in build national capacities in science and technology in these sectors. And this is very important. I would like to say a few more things about this. National content, national integration. Investment would not like this. They would not want to buy locally anything. And this is just this. If there is no regulation that push investment to buy locally, they will not. And it would be very effective, this kind of instrument, to avoid that these new sectors act as enclaves economy. If, for instance, in hydrogen, if you accept a huge investment project in hydrogen, like right now are proposing countries, European countries in Latin America, but also in Africa, what we will see is a huge infrastructure investment in renewables and in electrolyzers. But this these investments are not be linked in any way with the local productive structure. All this equipment will be imported, and all the production will be exported, and few people are going to work there. Perhaps more people are going to work during the installation, but not after that. And regarding value added, of course, foreign investments are not looking at value added locally. If you ask them to add value here, they are going to say you that is wrong. This is not aligned with WTO standard policies and whatever. But let me tell you, and let me invite you to read about Indonesia policy strategy, industrial policy strategy, that bans natural resources export that bans nickel export without any processing, and what they get is a lot of investments to scale in the chain. And of course, there are several other things to do, because if we just focus on that, what we should have is international companies working in our territories with kind of linkages, but it is not enough. Of course, we should integrate environmental policies with industrial policy. We should focus as well in creating public policies in strategic sectors, specifically with capacity to negotiate with international actors to grant, especially regarding to technological transfer. One interesting example on this is IPF in Argentina, trying to build capacities in lithium batteries. And of course, IPF do not have any capacity to build, to manufacture this kind of batteries, but right now they have a lot of knowledge about how these batteries work, and they are able to negotiate better with international capital, knowing about this process. Also, it's very important to have technological and research centers in critical sectors, and of course, it's very important to build capacities in graduates, postgraduate programs regarding specifically the new field of knowledge that are very related to this new paradigm. For instance, chemistry, for instance, electrochemistry, or metallurgy, and a lot of other, or new materials. There are a lot of very important sectors. So which, how many times do you have? Okay. Which are the main obstacles that we are going to face? First, there is right now creating a new standard about what kind of industrial policies are safe to implement, and which policies are not as good as should be. And this standard is, for instance, built by the IMF. There is a document published last year by IMF. IMF has been published a lot about industrial policy, which made you wonder why, because IMF never wonders very much about industrial policy, but now they are very interested on this matter. In this document, what IMF says is that you can implement certain kind of industrial policy, like subsidies, horizontal subsidies, or creating public goods, but they are against any regulation policies, especially those regulations that are against investments, and especially those regulations that could affect prices at international trade. So they, of course, are against ban of exports of natural resources. So this is a problem for the Global South, because you have these two kind of instruments, or subsidies or regulations. You cannot implement subsidies because you don't have enough fiscal space for do that, but you neither can implement regulations because it's going to be observed by IMF, by WTO, or other international institutions. However, and here is the good news in this scenario, because it's quite depressing, as you can see. But however, what you have is the opportunity to negotiate with this in new investment in a new context that is of course very close related with the new geopolitical tensions, and in a context that there is a race to build this new value chain. So the access to these natural resources, the access to these renewable energies, low-cost renewable energy, could be enough to get a better position in this negotiation. There is another obstacles. For instance, an obstacle that is very clear is that the global market is the space for industrial policy, and the growing renewable sectors in Latin America and in Asia and in Africa means opportunities for development industrial policies in countries with capacities to build turbines, wind turbines. So, in fact, Vestas and Norway and several countries has implemented export subsidies for their producers. So local entrepreneurs that are going to build on wind farm, for instance, wants to access to this subsidized credits to build these parks, to build these farms. So there is a kind of dispute about these internal markets that we should try to take care of this, because we are going to give this internal market. Also, we should see that it would be a moving target, because we want to do industrial policy, but the global north is also doing industrial policy. So it's very important. Do not have a naive perspective of this, and trying to focus especially in these links of these chains in which we actually can compete internationally, and not try to reproduce the whole chain in our countries. We also will face internal obstacles. Of course, since I came from Argentina, I am very depressing about this, because I know that it's very hard just to have a common idea of development. There is there is a lack of perspective of industrial development in our countries, and we have to recover this perhaps in alliances with workers, with trade unions and other sectoral local sectors, because otherwise we are going to get out of these possibilities. And also we will face what I call rent coalitions between multinational enterprises, local companies, and also local governments, that receiving a huge investment is a good reason just to give everything against that. And of course, we lack, so we need to build intersectoral alliances for development, taking, as I said, trade unions in this problem. Let me put out a major issue in this strategy, that since it's a kind of a strategy based on more sticks than carrots, we will need a kind of coordination among Global South countries to avoid a race to the bottom policies to attract investments. I think, and I try to repeat this as far as I can, we need to try to establish a common framework for industrial policies in the Global South. And there were a lot of noise about that. There were, for instance, the possibility of build a kind of alliance for lithium exports and controlling the price between Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. I think this is not gonna be. I think this is not a good idea, because they are very different. There are a lot of difference between these two countries, and there are a lot of institutional difference among them. But when I say that we have to build this kind of common sense of industrial policy, it's not such closely articulate policies among all Global South countries, but at least a kind of common framework, a loose coordination that let us some protection from this race to the bottom. So there's a last message in this presentation that is this start because of the need and perhaps everything, and we have a lot of a whole century talking about the importance of energy sovereign. And but I have to say that it's not such thing of energy sovereign if you don't have productive and technological sovereignty in this new paradigm that we are facing right now with energy transition. So for that is what is key, that the Global South country try to recover their capacities, productive and technological capacities in these strategic sectors. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Very, very interesting presentation. I forgot to say in the beginning, we are broadcasting this session by the YouTube channel of the Institute of Economics. And after the session, the broadcast will be available in our YouTube channel also. Please, Carlos, now I invite you to make your presentation. Thank you very much for coming. Carlos, thank you very much again, Veronica. Carlos, the floor is yours. We find a pointer if you want, Carlos. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to the KIRDSA organizer for the invitation to participate in this roundtable. In particular, I would like to thank to Renato and the team from Unicamp for the organization and the effort that implied the organization of this meeting, and go ahead with the KIRDSA effort. Thank you very much. Well, first, I want to say that I absolutely agree with the very interesting presentation of Veronica, but loyal with one of the deepest Uruguayan tradition, I am afraid that I will be quite pessimist than her. Sorry, we can avoid that. What I want to share with you are some reflection on base of the industrial STI policy implementation in Uruguay during the last period that we call the period of inclusive growth in Uruguay, more or less between 2005 and 2019. a starting point that I think that all of us here, we agree. Structural change in Latin America and probably worldwide is a necessary condition to sustain inclusive development paths. And our national policies, and in particular the implementation and design of our policies, have found serious obstacles to conduct the structural change. Uruguay is sometimes seen as a successful development case within Latin America, mostly due to a relatively egalitarian income distribution and democratic stability. However, we face serious problem of low productivity and economic growth instability. These problems are rooted in serious lack of capabilities to innovate and improve productivity level that in turn block potential development, sustained development process. During the period, sorry, Renato? Sorry, smoking is not a good.
Stop smoking.
During this period, Uruguay lived a singular period in the history. As many Latin American countries, the boom of commodities allowed a strong economic growth, which accompanied with social policy effort, has a great impact in social inclusion. For example, with a strong increase in the salaries. At the same time, the local currency appreciation improved the purchase capacity of these salaries, but affecting competitiveness and affecting investment. On the other hand, during this period, with economic growth at historical rates, the composition of GDP remained almost unchanged. And the gap between the profitability to export commodities regarding industrial goods was quite wide. Let me exemplify the trajectories of structural change of some Latin American countries using economic complexity indicators. This is the S-curve coined by our friends, the KIRDSA friends, Dominic Hartman and Flavio Pinheiro, that we, with colleagues from the Institute of Economics at UDELAR, have worked with this data and this methodology. The S-curve in the horizontal axis presents the economic complexity index that is well known for all of us. In the vertical axis, we have an indicator of relatedness, to what extent what a country produces is close to produce more sophisticated goods. We interpret that movement in the horizontal axis represents related diversification, while movement in the vertical axis represents unrelated diversification. Then we interpret that move along the S-curve represents a structural change process. Between 1964 and 2017, if you look at the example of Germany described what Ron Boschman called a sort of positive loop with high complexity movements. Asian countries, in turn, show a clear transition process of structural change to more sophisticated goods. Conversely, our countries describe erratic trajectories with increasing and decreasing complexity, go and came back, go and came back. I know that this is not new for any of us. Then, going to the point. Well, what can do the policies, the public policies do to change the path dependency process? How to break the path dependency? To one extent, there is room for maneuver to national policies. I insist, I absolutely agree with the necessity of STI and industrial policies, as Veronica well posed. But we have serious external constraints and internal constraints. However, despite this constraint that Veronica well explained related to the World Organization of Powers and the current conflict between the North and the North-South, I think that reflecting about the recent experience of implementation of industrial and political policy can give some useful lesson for us to build a new agenda of public policies in this field. And I think that maybe the Uruguayan experience is not a singular experience in Latin America, but we share many challenges and lessons. Let me present very quickly the main feature of the Uruguayan policy during this period. Remember, this is a period of economic growth, in particular, collecting the ideas of Veronica in a period where fiscal space was wider than now. During this period, a new institutional governance was created in Uruguay. The programmatic base was the National Plan of 2010, which has as main rationale that innovation is required in any public policy space. Then a cross-cutting governance design was necessary. However, it's functioning just a set of general orientation with very difficult assessment without clear goals to assess that. I would like to be clear. I am very critical with this plan. I am one of the writers of this plan. In agreement with this transversal orientation, a new governance design was elaborated and implemented, and was created what's called the Innovation Cabinet, composed by 5 ministries and the Planning Office. I mean to pervade the government policies in any sector with an innovation agenda. Moreover, a deliberative space was expanded, including labor union, local governments, and new actors trying to boost participatory policy. And in line with an agenda of new public management that was common in almost all Latin America, arguably with the exception of Brazil, a national agency was created for program execution. During this period, the instrument deployed grew exponentially, almost 2,000%. Many of these instruments were applied only once in a sort of policy experimentation, but not always with a policy learning process based on an evaluation process. Was most based on isolated initiatives of new instruments. Moreover, this instrument was more carrot-like instrument based on subsidies or tax benefits, but not stick-like instrument. Because, as Veronica posed, stick-like instrument regulation are very high when you are desperate for new investment. This policy, this new policy lacked, moreover, of a broad and robust coalition within the public authorities to support these cross-cutting policies. Moreover, the new governance system was not endowed with the necessary technical and administrative resource. The agency, yes, was endowed with a high training staff and financial resource, but the other bodies of the policy were just created without state capacities, administrative and technical capacities. This led to movement from the strategic plan, from the minister level to the executive level, where were defined the policy. Then the policy was more focused on to solve or to try to fit market failure, promoting a already dynamic sector, but without hardly any effect on a structural change. When you look for industrial policies during this time, a similar story appeared. Was created another ministerial cabinet, in this turn the productive cabinet. Some previous instruments were released, in particular the investment regime promotion and the creation of new free trade zones to manufacturing activities. And the main novelty was the creation of sectoral council with participation of labor union, sectoral chambers, sometimes academics, as a way to build a specific strategic plan to promote a strategic sector. In this field of policy, also we find serious problems. The sectoral councils also face limited engagement from various ministries, reducing it to the initiative to the Ministry of Industry, a traditionally weak ministry in Uruguay. Public-public coordination remained a serious challenge, and critical aspects of the sectoral plan was blocked by intermediate bureaucracies. For example, in the sectoral councils of IoTech, one of the main targets was to facilitate the registration of biological medicine. It was blocked by the intermediate bureaucracy of the health ministry. Then, once again, as in STI policy, we find that even being theoretically valid, the ministerial cabinets proved inefficient to mobilize a critical agenda in line with the ideas that Veronica highlighted. Around 2015, a new ministerial cabinet was created around the National System for Productive Transformation and Competitiveness. This new initiative created a new ministerial cabinet, now included almost all ministries, but coordination problems remain. The new cabinet tried to coordinate existing instruments, but facing, once again, public-public coordination and the lack of state capacities to implement the policies. Please take in mind, it's not a problem, it's not only a problem of money, it's a problem of policy capacities and administrative capacities. Some lesson from this uneven process. Let me quote a great professor from Unicamp to try to interpret this. As you well know, Amílcar Herrera proposed to distinguish between explicit and implicit policies. As I know that all of you are well aware of this distinction, but FTI explicit policies in terms of Herrera are those explicitly oriented to promoting innovation. In this case, I am talking about innovation and industrial policies. But Herrera said in the early 70s that it's not enough to have the better explicit policy, because the really, really relevant are those implicit policies in the national development plan, in the national development vision. And implicit policies are any kind of policies in other areas that implicitly affect industry and innovation, as macroeconomic policies, health policies, social policies. A good example of the interaction between implicit and explicit policies in this period in Uruguay is first the lack of a developmental project oriented to structural change. Once again, it's far to be new. Amilcar Herrera, 1972, talk about that. In particular, the exchange rate policy, the local currency appreciation, affects the competitiveness of the industrial sector, but in particular impact the capacity of investment in risk-prone activities as innovation is. And as you well know, the scope and the strength of this kind of implicit policy overshadow the explicit innovation policy, blocking potential initiatives that guide in structural change. Moreover, if we look at the micro level, at the coordination between the agenda, the industrial policy, and the STI, or innovation policy, which we can show that coherence was lacked. This agenda lack of coordination. Horizontal industrial policies was centered to attract investment, using the promotion investment regime or creating free trade zones for manufacturing activities. The main investment in Uruguay that was conflicted with our Argentinian brothers, the pulp and paper factories, are actually free trade zones, aiming to create employment and attractive investment. These policies prevail over any other policy, as Veronica already says, trying to promote national content or development of national supplier around this great investment. As Alice Ansden, Eric Reiner, and other great professors have taught us, we need policies against market signals. This is supposed to build a development process to subordinate a static comparative advantage to the prospect of sustainable development. This is very, very hard. All of us know very well that it's very, very, very hard. You need intertemporal preference adapt to promote uncertain change, to promote something that we cannot assure that will be successful, rather than deepening a profitable model in the short term now based on natural resource as we are exploiting it. It requires conflict management function for government, articulated public and private interests, but also public interest. Our state are big institution with differentiation interests that require be articulated, and articulate it is articulate conflict, is managing conflict. In my view, in a relatively egalitarian country as Uruguay, the main challenge is managing the distributive conflicts, the intergenerational distributive conflict. Finally, I will try to share with you not well-developed idea, but my good friend Marcia animated me about work about this idea of institutional creative destruction. I think that managing this conflict requires political support and technical capabilities, but requires also the ability to destroy creatively institutions that were created for the Fordist paradigm. Arguably, this is one of the main challenges we have, at least in Uruguay. Many institutional agreements that it worked and in camp from the industrialization period led by the state, the welfare state built around a closed economy that is not worked so far, and it operates as block mechanism for structural change. I am seeing that this institutional creative destruction process, it's not necessarily dependent of an international agenda. That could be room of maneuver to work on that. It's not easy, of course, but the agenda that proposed by Veronica, that I repeat, absolutely agreed, at least in my country, and sorry for del atrevimiento, I think that is also valid for other Latin American countries, require institutional creative destruction, managing the distributive conflict. Because, as Vero said, employment is still the main welfare distribution. Then it's a very complex, but I think from the design and implementation policy, this is a key issue in our agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Very interesting presentation, and this final message was very, very important, I think. Now I invite Carlos Pacheco to make his presentation. Thank you very much, Carlos Pacheco, to be here with us. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I apologize also, my presentation is in Portuguese, but most of the slides are data about Brazil. I will try to explain three big issues. The first one is the regional development of Brazil. I will comment some characteristics of the regional development in Brazil. The second issue that I would like to highlight is the national innovation systems. The characteristics. I will try to understand what's happening with the national innovation system, relate for regional development, to understand what's happening with the national innovation system, systems in a regional view about what happens with the states, the concentration, and what's it. And finally, I would like to highlight some characteristics about the new kind of the construction of a national innovation system, more closely to the demand side, not only the supply side. And to highlight this disconnection between our national innovation system and the economic performance. This is a very specific characteristic of many countries. 40 years ago is the challenge of Europe, but it's our challenge also here. So let me try to. It's in Portuguese. This is I have very few tests here, but first of all. We in Brazil have a large period of the industrialization of Brazil was very specific, concentrated in the state of São Paulo. Between the beginning of this 20th century until the Second War, there had a huge concentration of the industry in São Paulo. It go until the 70s. In 70s, São Paulo responded for half of the Brazilian industry. And after this, we concentrated the industry. So this is the data about starting in 70 and until 97. Look at the line of São Paulo here. This is something that's very good. It lost a lot. But what is important? If you look at the metropolitan area of São Paulo, this is a huge move in 27 years. And part of this concentration go for the hinterland of the state of São Paulo and part for the other states. So Brazil have this. What is the drive of this kind of movement in the 70s and after this? Many things. It's not related for explicit policy, like in the words of Herrera. It's not related for regional development policy specific. Of course, there are a lot of policies, industrial policy in the 70s to disconcentrate the industry from the state of São Paulo. So a lot of federal policies stimulated this kind of disconcentration. But it's much more related for, I would like to highlight that we have two main drivers of this movement in Brazil, not only in the 70s, but also after the 70s. One is the characteristic of the investment in Brazil. We need to understand that the economic cycle has different kinds of investment, the profile of the investment. At the end of the 70s, we changed a lot with the second National Development Plan to improve some kinds of industry that it's much more easy to do in the periphery of Brazil than in São Paulo, like the steel, like minerals, like agriculture. So the characteristic of the investment is more related for a disconcentration kind of performance in regional development. At the same time, in the 80s, until the 80s, we have a very close economy. Brazil have a very few flux of commerce with all the world. So there are a connection between the regional economy of each region, Northeast, North, São Paulo, etc. This kind of connection between this kind of economy creates some kind of solidarity between the regions in Brazil. When we moved to the 80s, we faced a long crisis for stabilization of the Brazilian economy. But at the same time, we opened opportunities after the 83 to exportation and opportunity in the international market. This created for many regions in Brazil some kinds of freedom to open opportunities in the internal market. So if you have in Maranhão, in northeast of Brazil, the opportunity to have this exportation of minerals or Pará, or in Mato Grosso with agriculture, they are connected with the opportunity in the international market. This creates some kinds of opportunity to grow for some regions in spite of the performance of São Paulo. So this kind of freedom of the opportunity. So this concentration is beginning in the 70s, and until now we are this concentration. But now this kind of disconcentration is very slow. Na verdade, this concentration in the 70s is very rapidly. We saw this number of the metropolitan area of São Paulo is a huge movement in the metropolitan area in terms of the industry location. What is interesting of Brazil is this concentration is not related for close or competition between regions and to translate some activities from one region to another region. It's happened in Brazil. It's happened in the beginning of the 20th century with the têxtil of São Paulo competing with the têxtil of the Northeast and close a lot of factories. It happens also in electronics when we created the free zone of Manaus, Zona Franca de Manaus. So many establishments in the São Paulo that produce TVs and other things closed in São Paulo between the competition with the. But this is it's not the general case. It's a few sectors that have this kind of competition. This concentration is much more related for new investment, for new plants, new activities. So if you look for the characteristic of the economic cycle, if you look for the characteristic of the investment, you understand why it's happened. One reason is the characteristic of the investment. The second, this is to show that the investment in Brazil until now is very low. The investment in Brazil before this year of 95, during the miracle, the Brazilian miracle, was very much high than after this. So the investment is low in Brazil. This means that when the investment is low, this concentration is also low, because this concentration is related for new investments. It's not related for translating one activity from the one state from another state. So when the investment is low, everything is low. The performance of Brazilian is this. One other characteristic of this concentration is the opportunity created for exportation. I showed this. This is a performance of many regions in Brazil. Most of them are much better than the performance of São Paulo. So they create in the Northeast, in the North region, some opportunity in the Central West of Brazil. We create some kinds of opportunities of growth related for exportation activity. And this happens until now. In red, this is the data of exportation of São Paulo. So you could see that the performance of São Paulo is not bad, but compared with other regions in Brazil, this is not the relative percentage of the exportation by states. So the São Paulo is in red. So the performance of São Paulo is not so good as the other states of Brazil. So the exportation creates this kind of opportunity for many states to create activities that are more related for international performance and great opportunity for growth for many other states. So I would like to highlight this first one. The regional development of Brazil and after the 70s is a rapid disconcentration at the first moment, and a very slow disconcentration, but the continued disconcentration of activity for many states of Brazil. Well, reduce the participation of the state of São Paulo in the GDP of Brazil, and create opportunity for many countries. Some of them, like Minas Gerais, with very strong policy. What is the drive of this concentration? Is the characteristic of the investment and the exportation of Brazil. Is not related for explicitly regional policy of Brazil. Do you have, during this period, did you have policy for this? Yes, we have. If you look at all the policies, the second the national development, if you look at the pro-alcohol, if you look for the informatic policy of Brazil, there are a lot of policies, most of them sectoral policy, very important. In the 90s, we have a lot of policy like, we named this regime automotive regime for the investments of in automobile, in transportation. We have also generic for medicals. We have a lot of sectoral policy with a lot of influence. But most of these policies were not regional oriented policies for developing some region. Of course, the states create a lot of policies with incentives, with kind of to attract the activity. And we have in Brazil what is a war between the states for attract investments. So there are policies, but the main drivers of this movement is not related for the effectivity of this policy. So what happens at the same time with the National Innovation System? It is very curious because the National Innovation System also disconcentrate. The first one, the reason of this is the growth of the higher education systems and the growth of the graduate programs in Brazil. It is, I don't like to show all the data. I only like to highlight this growth. This is the means that the graduate schools in Brazil, this is the master's program, this is the PhD programs. It is not, there are a lot of information here, but I only like to highlight this. It means that the higher education systems and the master and PhD programs grow a lot, continually. The only data and year that we don't have this is in the pandemic. in COVID crisis. But if you look, this is a long-term growth of all the graduate system. So, and this is related for all the countries in Brazil, for all the states. We create universities in many other regions, not only in São Paulo. And at the beginning of this process, most of half, perhaps 6% of PhDs are doing in the state of São Paulo. After this reduced a lot. This is the number of the growth of postgraduate system. If you look here, PhD graduate students per capita in terms of inhabitants. So you could see that São Paulo is not the best one. It's very important, have a lot of graduate school, but it's not more the most important terms in terms of per capita. Of course, São Paulo is the main source of science, produced science in Brazil. If we compare the production of scientific production, we produce about almost 30% of the scientific paper in the state of São Paulo. But this is much less than 30, 20 years ago. So there are a kind of this concentration of this system. If you look at about the data related for inhabitants, we see that the Rio Grande do Sul performs better than São Paulo. It means that we face a kind of this concentration. Here is more clear. This is the, in yellow is the production, the scientific production papers produced by authors in the state of São Paulo compared with papers of other states in Rio de Janeiro. So this is the kind of show that there are also, I'd like to highlight this because there are also a same movement of this concentration of the national innovation system. The national innovation system, of course, this is one kind of metric of national innovation system related for PhDs and human research. But this is a very important aspect of the national innovation system. So it means that we face this kind of this concentration during this whole period of growth of the postgraduate system. This is the evolution of postgraduation system. This is also a data about the articles, papers for inhabitants in Brazil. So São Paulo is also important, but there are a lot of other states like Rio Grande do Sul and Rio that performs better in relative terms of population compared to São Paulo. This is the number of research per inhabitants in the country. So here is more clear that São Paulo, there are a lot of other states with relative index better than São Paulo. So it shows that some things happen in the national innovation system. It not means that São Paulo is isolated from the other states. There are a lot, the creation of the capacity in many other states create a lot of opportunity of collaboration between scientists in São Paulo and the other states. This have a very important growth of collaboration, national and international. I do not comment on international collaboration, but in terms of national collaboration, there's a strong collaboration in all the fields of knowledge. And what is interesting here is this is good for everybody because the impact of this kind of collaboration metric, if you use this metric about the citations, the papers produced by authors between different states are much better, have impact is much more better than the authors that produce only in one state. So the first one is the performance of the regional development of Brazil and the drivers of this concentration related for exportation and related for the performance of investment in spite of a lot of sectoral policies and other things like this. The second is this concentration of the national innovation systems. I would highlight that the concentration of the national innovation system is something related for supply side economics. It's much more a policy for create universities and stimulate the graduate systems of the Brazil than something is connected for a strategic view about the human research for economic development. It's not related. The graduate systems in Brazil grow inertially. It's not something that have a direct. Of course, we have a national plan, 5 years plan for human resources in the country, but this kind of growth is not related. It's some kind of cut and paste system. You have the system in São Paulo. All the researchers in all the country like to have the same kind of systems. There are some things that Claudio Moracasio, the Brazilian author, one time told me that there are academic drive. This is everybody like to be equal hardware. So all the institutions would like to have this. So this is a cut and paste process of creating graduate schools in all the country. It's not something related or connected with that. It's good. It's not bad. If you have some strong basis for qualified human research, it's not a big problem. You need to try to connect this and try to direct this for some kinds of connection with the economic system. It's not also that is forget this. It could be an exit. It's not a big problem, but it's different. But if you look for the other side, if you understand the system in another way, this is very curious. This half of the employment in activities in sectors that are intensive in knowledge are in the state of São Paulo. So we saw this data about this concentration. But when we look inside the data, we see that almost half of the all the activity, the employer measured by the national statistics relate for activities in high value, in medium value activity, technological activity are in the state of São Paulo. And what is very curious is if you see the exportation. I show before, some slides before, the decrease of the share of exportation of the state of São Paulo, okay? Share. But if you look about the exportation that are related for medium value and high value technology or knowledge-based activities, this is the performance of the state of São Paulo compared with the other states. So we have this kind of concentration, but when we look at the more sophisticated activity, economic activity, we have a strong. So I would like highlight here the supply side is one thing, the demand side is other thing. This is more related for the demand side of the economy, what they need for this kind of activity. When you look for compare São Paulo with the other states in terms of the employment and activity with medium value and high level knowledge activity, it's very clear that the second place is Minas Gerais is less than 10% of this year. So the distance between São Paulo and the other states is very huge. This is the concentration of São Paulo in numbers and absolute numbers for the year of the 2022. The other thing that is very interesting is related for also the demand side and activity is startups. This is the data of the Deloitte and the Brazilian Association of Startups about the concentration of the state. So 40% of the startups that this is not very clear, the methodology of this kind of issue. The Brazilian Association of Startups have around 13,000 associates with startups, so they do this kind of the association, but almost I think it's robust, but it's not a national statistic about the from national statistical board. It's something that from private sector to try to understand what's happening with the startups movement in Brazil. But also at the same time, the difference between the first one that is São Paulo, the second that is Minas, is 40 to 9. So it's a huge concentration of this kind. And could be worse if you look for deep techs, not only all these startups, but what we name this deep tech. So startups in high technology fields. Oh, this is a sub cluster of this all the startups. This organization emerged, did this last year, and we have this kind of data about the 55% of the. We use this a lot because the report is very kindly with the FAPESP. We use a lot of this. So they show that the ecosystem of São Paulo is very friendly for this kind of enterprise. And what is interesting is the role of the universities in this kind of ecosystems. USP, Unicamp, the state's university play a very important role. The performance of the state of São Paulo compared in terms of characteristics that are likely to be friendly for innovation is very different for all. In FAPESP, we run some programs of innovation. We are in this last slides. We are talking not about the demand side, the supply side. We are talking about demand. Where who I finished. I know this number. We try to. I have two now. The watch and. But we run some innovation programs at FAPESP. FAPESP is a research agency. We finance all fields of knowledge. Most of the research that we finance are curiosity drive. This is all the agents of finance research in the world have two legs. One is curiosity drive research. The other is use-inspired research, applied research, and basic research. Basic research is not a good word. It's more interesting to use the idea that is curiosity driven. It's the Pascal quadrant. So the idea so we finance all, but we finance innovation and use-inspired application. This is very interesting because we have a geography of innovation in the state of São Paulo. We saw this concentration of economic activity for the metropolitan area of the state of São Paulo in the 80s, in the 90s. This is strong, this concentration for the hinterland of the São Paulo. We named this piece of the state of São Paulo between Campinas and Ribeirão Preto the California Paulista. So this is something, it's very curious because this region is the most important in economic coffee economy in Brazil in the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th, is the same place between Campinas until Ribeirão Preto. So what happened with this kind of geography of innovation? This is we started this program, PIP, in 1997. So this is the beginning. What happened 20 years after this? This is the number of, Of course, the larger number in the area of the city of São Paulo. But the city of São Paulo is many times Campinas, Ribeirão, São Carlos, etc. If you look this region of São Carlos here, it's incredible. It's a very small city, but it is the city with the more important number of PhD inhabitants in Brazil. So it's what we would like to highlight here is innovation creates some kinds of specific geography. And one very curious is the research universities play a very important role in this kind of new activity of startups. We are talking not about any kind of startup. We finance research in the startup. So our startup that have research is not a fintech, is not something that is only a software for applications. It's something that have some kinds of research inside the project that we finance. So to finalize, I have only 3 conclusions. We have this concentration of activity in Brazil, this very strong concentration in the 80s, in the 70s, and a low concentration after this. But until now, we are this concentration because not to have more concentration activity in the state of São Paulo. São Paulo reduced the participation in whole the GDP of Brazil. And this is related for the drivers, the most drivers of these are the kind of investment of each cycle, and also the open of the Brazilian economy with the international commerce for everything. Why this? Because before we open, we are very connected. And the Northwest region are connected with Brazil. When we created the petrochemical industry in Bahia, this petrochemical supply for São Paulo. It's very, creating the pole petrochemical of Bahia was created by the federal government to stimulate this concentration of industry, but the demand of the polo is related for the industry of the state of São Paulo. When we open the economy, we create opportunities that is more freedom for the relation for São Paulo. We reduce this kind of solidarity between the regions and create these kinds of opportunities. It's very clear in agriculture in Brazil, in the central west of Brazil, now in north, but in mineral and other, most of the activity are very intensive in natural research, trained to this concentration and create links with international economy. The second that is, at the same time, during this period, we have this concentration of national innovation system. But I to highlight is not related for the same process. It relates much more for supply side policies to create graduate schools and higher education policies in Brazil. And this is a feature of the national innovation system. It is not connected with the industrial policies. It's not connected for the economic performance. Of course, it's much better now than 3 decades ago. There are much more activity between research and much more stimulus from policy and federal agencies, state agencies to connect the universities with the demand side and try to connect this kind. But this concentration of the national innovation system is much more related for a policy to higher education than something that is economic measure. The second is, in spite of this concentration, the state of São Paulo until now plays a very different role. Most activity very intensive in knowledge are concentration in the state of São Paulo. It's kind of different. So we change with this concentration, but the characteristic of the state of São Paulo until a little bit different for other states. And inside the state of São Paulo, we also create a new geography of innovation, much more related for including the research universities that we have here. In Campinas, we publish, Unicamp publish what is now the sons of Unicamp, the doctors of Unicamp. I don't know in English, spin-off of Unicamp. There are more than 500 companies created by alumni in around the university. So, like in São Carlos, like Campinas, like São José dos Campos, like the very cities in the state of São Paulo, like Piracicaba, Piracicaba is a huge cluster of innovation in agriculture. So, create this kind of. So, I would like to highlight this. I saw this presentation of Veronica and Carl. Of course, I would like to highlight, of course, the issues in the background of the discussion is structural change. This is the question. What is happening in Brazil during the 70s, despite the military period, is a structural change of the economy in the 70s with the Second National Development Plan. After this, we have a bad performance, and also all the years they are the same thing, because the growth is so low, and we don't have this kind of. So the discussion here is how to improve this performance to a really very structural change of the Brazilian economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pacheco. Very interesting and important presentation. We are running out of time, but I think we have time for a quick round of questions and quick answers from the presenters. Please, questions. Please, Lydia, your name, please. Please. Once more.